Hello, everyone. Before we start the podcast, I'd like to mention Pro Political Gear. Check out propoliticalgear.com for your political apparel today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Political Pod. I am your host, Chris Caputo, alongside me, my co-host, Andrew Kornick, and it's been a crazy day. It really has, and we're going to get right to it.
Let me be clear.
You peddle false narratives.
Sexy boo.
We'll see who cancels who.
Watch me.
All right, so to start it off, I am going to say right away, before we get into any type of politics, WrestleMania was pretty good. Okay,
Yeah.
now we can proceed. They're gonna do some kind of merger where they're gonna have UFC and WWE under one company, which they're going. I think they're going to court over it for being overvalued or something like that. Whenever that comes up, maybe we talk about that. Maybe we take a little sidestep. You know what I mean? It's still in there.
Yeah,
It's
it'd
a
be
court case, right? We could have Yang on the show one day as a guest, and he could talk about how he wants to, go after the WWE, and ask some questions about that. I haven't seen any improvement on that, so I like to ask him some questions on that. But anyway, first off, if you saw yesterday, a lot of stuff has happened. Okay, when it comes to the indictment, you saw the protesters out. Both sides. You saw Marjorie Taylor Greene was getting booed. Santos, they're in New York. Of course they're going to get booed. No surprise there.
Yeah, really.
And he walked in. I was supposed to be there, but to be honest, dude, I was so tired. I could not make it to go there. Only sleeping for 4 hours. And I was like, yeah, well, he's going to be in there in and out. It's going to be 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. It's not going to be that long, and probably... nothing's gonna happen.
Went.
No, I should have went, and I regret it. But I'll be there at the hearings to record it. Man, I could have gotten some interviews done, which would have been dope. Really would have been cool. But it's one of those things that just didn't happen. So the only thing I can say is that other events next time. And all I could do right now is talk about it with you, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, what do you think of this whole indictment? Besides the fact that on the last episode you said you agree with it, but besides that, what are your thoughts on the indictment right now?
Well, I agree that he should be indicted. I think that's fairly obvious. But it is a bit upsetting to see to just see this become reality TV essentially. The way they're like following him, which it's to be expected to an extent, right? Because it's a president being charged for a crime. But it just kind of sucks that we're now kind of back in that media ecosystem, like 2015, 2016, where it's like every little thing that Trump does, it gets like a bunch of media coverage. That was honestly one of the draws to Joe Biden, not for me, but for people in general, where it's like, oh, we can elect this guy, Trump will lose, we won't have to hear about him again, but clearly it's not going to happen. So it's unfortunate, but it's also good to see like at least some like powerful person getting some kind of justice. Now, to say how much he's going to get charged for this or whatever is a whole other thing. It's probably not going to be much, but maybe it'll open the door to more indictments for other crimes he's currently being charged for, which is a lot. So there's that.
Yeah, when you talk about the media and you talk about how it's going back to that 2015, 2016 style of covering Trump, it's definitely going there. And if anything, it might be going there for especially the primaries, right? We look at the election coming up in 2024, and we see the poll numbers keep coming out for Trump. Everything's coming out.
Not even looking like a primary at this point.
Yeah, it's like, just drop the debates. If DeSantis doesn't run, just drop the debates. What are you there for? If you're there to run, you are literally there to make a name for yourself. And that's fine. And I respect it. You know what I mean? I respect it. You want to get your name out there, But
yeah, there's speculation that some people running just to get like a cabinet spot.
Oh yeah, well there's that too. Absolutely, there's that too. There's a cabinet spot. There's to make a name so then you can build your brand. Look, who the hell was Tom Steyer? Right? But now you know that name. Why? Because he ran for president. That's it.
Yeah.
I forgot why he was there. I know he was a billionaire. I just didn't know. I forgot what he did, but I know
I
his
think he
name.
was like a billionaire donated for like climate causes or something
That's what
like
I was
that.
thinking, but I don't know the whole thing, so I didn't want to say too much on that. I
Yeah.
really okay.
But I think his thing was he had like this giant like anti-Trump pack too. So it was like
Yeah, I
this whole
mean, but
thing.
that's kind of what a lot of the candidates had, right? Like you look at I'll give
But
you a
like he
perfect
had like a
example.
super PAC for like 'cause he was like
Oh,
a
okay.
billionaire.
Because I was gonna say there were some people that were really really on Trump's ass, like Amy Klobuchar, for example, right?
I mean they all were. Yeah.
How does your hair fare in a blizzard? Like, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
if you guys remember that clip, I mean that was great. All right. Uh, but yeah, I mean Tom Steyer was just this nobody, right? In our world, on just the normal everyday person. We didn't know who he was, and then he comes into politics, and there you go. You see him on the election. I mean, you see him on the debate stage, right? I mean, a lot of people got bigger because of it. Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, we know Tulsi strongly a lot. I mean, I see your face
We
right
know
now. I
Tulsi
see your
Gabbard.
face right now, and it's painful. I understand. It's painful. Liberals. It's gonna be hard for me to say this. You are right.
And
That's
they
it. That's
were
all. I'm
about
so
Tulsi
upset.
Gabbard 100%.
Oh, I'm so upset that liberals are right. I'm so upset about that. It really irks me, right? Because it's not that. And if you know Tulsi Gabbard because you're a Republican or a conservative, you just
You're
gotta
following a
know
grifter.
you're following a grifter. Most of the people in your
100%.
party are grifters, okay? And it's not to bash the Republican Party, but at the same time, it's like we want you to open your eyes and say maybe they're grifting, maybe they're not telling us the truth, maybe they're telling us stuff, and it happens on the Democratic side, but to a much larger scale now on the Republican Party, where it's like, yeah, I like you could see it. Like a lot of people see this, right? And
Yeah.
when you realize you have Tulsi Gabbard, okay, talking about a lot of leftist ideas, and then the next day she's the host of Tucker Carlson tonight, it's kind of like, well, what the fuck happened? You know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah,
happened? And
it's really
yeah,
something.
that's definitely something where you gotta look at it and be honest with yourself, right? And it's the another problem that they have is on these TV shows why I left the left is always like in quotations why I left the left. They'll have someone quotation marks on the left that join the people on the right. But honestly, there's some grifters out there, and for people who are conservative Republicans who want to let you know that you know stop following the grifters. I'm not going to start
Essentially.
naming names. We already named one, right? But basically, back on topic here, right? A lot of people started getting some notoriety. Nah, it's black, right?
Notoriety. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Anyway, uh, they would get that and be out there and be on these platforms, be on Twitter, be on the stage, be on the ballot if they can. But the problem is, media would be against them. And I think that's a problem with Trump, where he's getting so much media attention. Now, these other candidates aren't going to get attention. And we just go back to square one.
Yeah, essentially. And it's kind of weird too. I'm thinking of DeSantis mostly. He's like the only like viable candidate against Trump.
Oh, absolutely.
To the extent he even is one. But something interesting too when you think about that is that obviously Trump's getting all like the bulk of the media coverage just in general in terms of politics, but especially recently. And DeSantis isn't gonna get that much. He's gonna get in the news. I mean, like he just recently like quietly kind of slipped in like a bill expanding like gun rights to where you don't even need to carry like any kind of license to conceal
Yeah,
carry
that
permit or
happened.
anything.
Yeah.
But like and the people talk about it on the news obviously, but it's not going to be like headlines, every second they're following him around type of thing. And DeSantis himself isn't really going out of his way to talk to a lot of these outlets. Like, he did a media tour recently. He just released a book, as people do when they're about to run for president, by the way. So he released his book and went on this media tour, but the media tour was really only like right-wing outlets, people that are going to play ball with him, essentially. And that's really not going to help his case to run for president if he wants to do that. He's going to have to go on these liberal outlets and make his case in a more moderate sounding way. Which again kind of goes back to what we kept going back and forth on, of like, is
Yeah.
he actually like a good moderate candidate? I don't think
He,
so.
oh, man, he's gonna have to start opening it up a little bit. But I think that right now, it's okay for him to stay in his own comfortable ballpark because right now Trump's breaking news every 2 seconds, right?
Yeah. But you
And
can talk about his
you,
response too to the indictment. I mean,
of course, but also to mention before we get into that is if you look at DeSantis, right? Uh, and you look at when Trump say that he's gonna run, not for nothing, but if I look at the date right now, okay, and we see it 2023, today's the 5th of April. It's still early. It's still very early, you know? It's not like we're later in 2024. It's like, oh, he's going to run this or that. He could very much open up in November to like moderate media outlets. You know, like you could just see him like on Piers Morgan. You know what I mean? In like November, December, right?
yeah, but I don't know. It's like by that point, and this is kind of the problem too with him, is that he's not really like Trump's already out there running. Like, he's building so much. Like, he already has a lot, right? Because he was president and he still kept that momentum going. Basically, he kept rallying. He kept getting donations, and all that stuff. Combine that also with the fact that he's also just like announced like he announced right after the midterms, basically, that he's running for president. He wanted to announce earlier, but they were like, you can't. We're like on track to lose already, or losing a lot of momentum already going into it.
I still think it was an interesting choice to run, even though Herschel Walker's still his race was still going. Walker's race was still going with Warnock, and he just said, "No, right, well, I want to announce now." And I think he wanted to announce now because he didn't know when he was going to get indicted. He knew something was going to happen.
Yeah,
He definitely had to.
I
There's
think the
no
criminal
way.
stuff was definitely a factor into him announcing like this early run. Because
Mhm.
one, I think it gives them more kind of hurdles to go through to actually go through some of this stuff, and two, it gives him the like political angle of, oh, I'm being prosecuted type of thing.
I think that honestly, and I've said this earlier to you before we started recording. I think he enjoys this. I think he likes being prosecuted, right? Like it's media attention. People who don't understand, people who watch the news are not going to understand what we're talking about because people who watch the news listen to the news, if that makes sense, right? So they'll say, "Oh, that's horrible," because they're not taking a dive into thinking like a deeper dive into what's going on, right? Because as I said previously, it's like these people don't have time to, right? They just kind of want to know what's going on. That's it. Pass over, and that's why there's people like us doing what we do, right? Where we dive into the issues and we talk about what's happening, and we give our personal takes on what do you think is going through their minds, the politicians, or And Trump's head, I think that he personally enjoys this. The fact that there was a rally outside of the the courthouse. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was there. George Santos was there. I mean, I don't know how he feels about George Santos, but Santos
Probably
was
liked him.
there. Maybe he does, right? But it's just the acknowledgement that he's
I
in the news,
I
that
think
he's
there's
there, right?
definitely likes the attention. I think it's
Yeah.
also true that I mean, he probably knows that nothing really substantial is going to come out of this, most likely. I feel like he's had so many of these
Yeah.
kinds of, and he's been like sued over stuff like this before, you know.
This is
Had
not gonna. This does not
yeah.
fear him. This does not fear him at all. He's not shaking in his boots at all. In fact, he knows he's gonna win the primary. Now, when the general comes, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna get really interesting.
Yeah.
Biden is gonna have to do a lot of screw ups if you think he did already. He's gonna have to do a lot more. And people say, well, he screwed up this country so much. Aha. Did you see Trump's last year he was in office in 2020? He had a terrible year. Yeah, you can say the pandemic, this, you could say Black Lives Matter, this, and there were big contributions. Don't get me wrong. If that never happened, I think, Andrew, we agreed several times that Biden would have lost easy. It would landslide. But something of that nature, okay, not a pandemic. I really
I
hope another pandemic doesn't
think it
come.
was a
But
combination of things.
yeah, but definitely those two and the reactions to those things. Uh, Something like that is going to have to happen for Biden. Okay, I think for Trump to win, uh, in in the 2024 election. That's what I think.
Yeah,
Unless nothing really
honestly though,
happens
like
and people are just tired of Biden.
we're gonna get to
Right.
this in a little bit, but if trends, like election result trends, keep going like they've been, I don't really. It's really becoming harder and harder for Republicans to really win a lot of these races, just
And
because
I
of the state that things are in right now.
think they
I
know that, and that's why they are going the direction they're going in. But as we know, is that we don't think it's helping, right? I mean, you go back. Let's go to the election, right? Let's go to the midterm election, okay? Let's go into the fact that Democrats, and I think I mentioned it on this show once before, and I'll mention it again. Democrats literally paid to back certain candidates because they were quote unquote MAGA candidates, which means that there was a less of a chance they thought they did the math and everything. They said there was less of a chance for them to win the election. The Republicans, the MAGA like Republicans, or what they would call, in quotation marks, the crazies, right? They would pour money into them just so their candidate could win, which is crazy. They are funding the opposition, their own opposition. They're funding because they believe that Republicans are so crazy that they're gonna lose. And then in 2022, midterm election comes, and just
they
like
were kind
that,
of right.
and it's like, and you can watch Ben Shapiro's video on it, on how there was bad candidates in certain states and all this other stuff, right? I mean, you can, even if you're a conservative, you look at that and you say, "Wow, the candidates were terrible. The ads that they ran were terrible. Everything about it was terrible." So if they go in this direction, I think they lose.
Mhm.
Okay, but it's an easy win for Trump in the primary. General is going to be interesting.
Uh,
Um,
do you think being indicted makes his case stronger or worse than the general?
that's the question.
Or do you think people just don't
That's
care?
That's the question. Well, it depends. I think a lot of people turn around and be like, "Well, it's a bullshit case, right?"
Mhm.
Um,
Because it's interesting. Because on paper, I mean, in general, right? When there's sketchy stuff with like politicians and people like running for office, it's usually a pretty easy mark against them. But Trump, that's proven time and time again to be like the opposite. Like when Next Hollywood came out, that was like kind of like nothing basically for to a lot of people.
mhm,
And then even like I think Republican like registration and the Republicans were at their highest like approval in the Trump years during the first impeachment trial, like with the Ukraine call and all that,
mhm.
and the Russiagate stuff. So it's interesting. Like there is like some evidence to suggest that maybe like if people don't buy like this case or don't understand like the degree to which it's a crime, that hey maybe this will actually help him in the general election because of the political moment so different. But at the same time, I think just the general trajectory of Trump and people aligned with him has been very negative in the past couple years. So it's more likely it'll skew towards either not really changing things too much or being a slight negative
I'll tell
overall.
you one thing that I think that this indictment could have been really good for him if January 6th never happened. If
Yeah, I
he
think that's
didn't say anything
one of the
about the
big things.
election fraud, if he didn't mention election fraud, I think that there was a good chance because
Well, it's
obviously that was the
interesting
lead
because I
up,
feel
right?
like they could get away with I think they get away with like making some weird implications or gestures, but I think that the election fraud stuff just got so crazy and so blatantly not true. Because I think you could make some like plausible deniability of like, oh well, maybe there was some sketchy stuff with the election, and that's honestly what a lot of like quote unquote moderate Republicans do now when they're asked about this. They'll like say like, oh well, there was weird stuff, but it wasn't Venezuela and Dominion
Yeah,
plotting and
of
all.
course. It's like, was there
But they
fraud in
got
the
so like
election?
crazy with it.
Yeah, if you ask people, is there fraud in the election? Me and Andrew will look at you and say, yes, of course there is. It's in every election, right? But it's the levels of
Like you could definitely find like
fraud that is
fraud,
really the discussion, right? Like that's really what it comes to, is like the levels of fraud, right? Because
which
then when we go from
every study that
fraud, we move to
shows that
rigged.
that
That's
election
where the
fraud is not
conversation goes.
really an issue at all in basically every election in the past 20 years.
And something to cover that is like, oh, well, how can you be saying that? And it's like, well, here's how I put it, okay? And maybe Andrew agrees with me on this one as well. Uh, when they go to these different states, whether it's Georgia or any of these other states where it was quote unquote, rigged or, machines, this, that, whatever, right? If these court cases have came out and they proved that it did not happen, and even the Supreme Court, 6-3 conservatives to liberals turn it down, there's a good chance there was no fraud in the election. But listen, maybe I'm not thinking too much into it. Maybe I don't think as much more in it as the other guy does. But and when I see all these court cases and I see that they're not winning any of them, they're like, we have the evidence. It's like, okay, if there was fraud in the election, I will tell you right now, I would stand by your side and say, yes, there was a rigging in this election, and I 100% I'd be on your side if you were to say that. And it was true, and it came out. It's like, wow, look at that, right? But no, that didn't happen. And trust me, that whole election could have been done better. I believe that when it comes to elections, okay, whether it's vote by mail or this or that, it's got to be done by the night of. That's it. Everything's gonna be counted by the day of. There's no it'll lead till Friday. Friday, like that doesn't even make sense. It's like, oh well, if they do this, that. No. It should be conducted in a much better way, okay? And it wasn't,
I mean, do
okay?
you think that
So
like
here's the mess.
not every state can afford to pay that many people to count votes for that long? So do you want like the
I
federal
don't
government
know
to
if
step
that's.
in and give them like a giant?
I mean, there's a
not
lot
every.
of votes that get counted every 4
We
years,
have
and we don't. You
yeah,
know what
but
I
that
mean?
was the most ever, and it was like
It
different
was the
circumstances
most
because of
ever.
COVID. So
Of course,
it's
I
to be
agree,
expected. I
but
mean, it could always be better, but
again, they could have counted the, mail-ins before by
oh
like
yeah, I agree
a
with
day or
that.
two. You know what I mean? Like there are ways where you can do this. And if you don't agree with
It didn't
mail,
help
then,
either. Like
that's another thing.
it didn't help either that the states that had that counted the mail-in votes early were Florida and Ohio, which were states that Trump won. So it really gave that red mirage effect that led, I think, in large part. I mean, I'm sure some percentage of them would have bought the idea of it being stolen regardless, but it really like made that seem more plausible to some of these people.
But yeah, and you can even ask Andrew knows I was up for maybe I was up for 24 hours more. I was up for 2 days actually. I was up for 2 days, okay? I was up for 2 days and I could not sleep. I was waiting for the election to be over. I had to be up to see the results. And I was up, dude. The previous night, I couldn't go to sleep. It was like, oh my god, it's election day. I got up. I remember it. I got a McDonald's breakfast. I'm never up for McDonald's breakfast, so it was a beautiful thing. I go up, get McDonald's breakfast, right? Go to the voting booth, did my thing, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever, right? Did what I had to do. I was up throughout the whole thing. At night, when I saw the thing, when I saw the polls and everything, I was like, oh my god, maybe there's something up with this, right? And shout out to Fox News for being absolutely the best election coverage that is mainstream until like the AM. Then you get into Gulag hour. Then CNN is actually not that bad during that time. But Fox is actually really good and it's actually not biased. It's actually pretty good. Like take my word for it. If you don't believe me, Andrew over here, we have the leftists who will agree with me. So, take it with that, okay?
Until the hosts start talking, it's fine.
Yeah,
Then they have the
exactly.
host on to talk about like their election analysis. Then you're like, okay, bye bye.
But that happens at like in the AMs, right? Like,
Yeah.
1 a.m. and all that. And CNN
I mean,
did
hey, they were the
theirs.
ones who called what's the state, Arizona? They were the first one to call that
Arizona,
for
I think it
Biden. So.
was. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they get their stuff quick, man. I don't even know how they get their stuff so quick, but they
No.
do, right? Um, but the 2024 election is going to be definitely very interesting with the general. I mean, that's what we're really looking for because we look past the primary. The only thing we like about the primary election is the debates. When the debates come, yeah, I want to see Perry Johnson. I want to see Vivek Ramaswamy. I want to see Nikki Haley and how will they fare going against Trump. Or if DeSantis runs, how they fare against him. I don't care about Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence. They're too boring for us. I mean, we could care less what they're going to say, right? But me and Andrew, it's unfortunate. We look for these animated politicians because that's what really gets us going, all right? And there's got to be something where you turn around and you say the same thing to everyone watching, right? Or listening. There's got to be something in that. There's got to be some kind of excitement there. If there's no excitement, then it's just dreadful. It's just bad policy with bad charisma. You know what
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Give us
And
something,
and that
right?
goes for both sides, man. That goes for like even the Democrats. You've seen some of the people there; they're dreadful, absolutely dreadful. I can't even listen to them. Like, dude, like I'd rather get this guy over here because I mean, he's got more charisma and his policies are a bit better than yours. So why would I care to vote for you? You know what I mean? So I mean, we're gonna be looking at this very closely, as you know. I feel like we talk about this like every week, and we probably will be talking about this every week, the 2024 election, because there's always something new coming out, always, and that's the election cycle has started early, much earlier than intended. Better for us, I guess. We get to talk about it every week, right?
More things to talk about. Yep.
More things to talk about. That's just how it is. So, like I said, the aftermath of this indictment is really going to show in the general. It does not show in the primaries. We already know Trump's going to win that, unless DeSantis comes out of the woodwork and says, "Hey, I'm running."
Unless,
Everyone else has no shot.
unless somehow the judge gets Trump like in jail, then
I
Trump wins the primary pretty much.
Yeah,
Which
I mean,
that's not gonna happen. So
he could get arrested, and that's it. No more run. That's it. It's over.
it's over.
It's
But that would
over.
have
So,
much worse political implications than just
oh
the
man, that would get crazy,
just
dude.
because of the
You would
reaction would be
look,
crazy.
man. You would have to go after everybody that has committed a crime in the elite circle, and people know that wouldn't happen. So you're gonna see a lot of outrage from the people. You're gonna see a lot of outrage, of course, from right wingers, and rightly so, right? That one gets prosecuted, and you go around and you see these other people. You're like, they didn't prosecute that person over whatever it is. So that would be, you're absolutely right. The implications would be terrible. So let's actually hope that Trump doesn't get arrested and put in jail. That would be well, yeah. Well, you just said it. If he gets arrested, right? Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, a lot of people would be angry about it, but it doesn't make it the wrong thing to do.
But you just said the implications are going to be terrible if it were to happen.
Yeah, they would be.
Yeah, that's my point. That's my point right there. Because we would have to go after other people, and
Well,
people
no,
know
not
that
because we have to
wouldn't
go there,
happen.
just because people would just get really mad about it.
Oh no, of course, of course. Well, I'm in the circle of you have to go after everyone else. If you're gonna go after one, you're gonna have to, like
Yeah, but they
dominoes,
never
like a
do
domino
that.
effect. But yeah, of course they're never
They
gonna do
never do
that.
that. Even
It's
like when like in other like fields when like the people at top get arrested, they just kind of treat them like an outcast.
Look, I'm waiting for the Epstein stuff to come out. The book, I want to see everyone that was in there. But of course, they had
No,
it
they got
filmed.
one.
Yeah, the Epstein, the trial with Ghislaine Maxwell is the reason why they showed Johnny Depp on TV and not that case. So I mean, Look, man, there's corruption everywhere, and you're not going to get everybody. Swamp will not be drained no matter who you put in office, and it's unfortunate, but it's also the truth. Another thing, speaking of truth, right? There's something that we forgot to mention, right? Uh, Truth Social. So Trump dropped from an estimated $3.2 billion last fall to $2.5 billion today. Okay, and
What's his
all
net
because
worth?
of Truth Social. Yeah, his net worth. His net worth has dropped, 550 million, and it's largely due to Truth Social. It's not doing as well as his base says it's doing, or what he thought he would do. And let's be honest, no one wants to use right wing Twitter, because Twitter already has a lot of right wingers on there. So why would you use a different social media platform? Elon came in, and if you're a Republican or a conservative, and you say, "Oh, well, there's freedom of speech here now," it's like, well, why would you go to Truth Social, where less people get to see what you have to say?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, right? So Elon could have helped in that, taking down Truth Social. But again, I don't see it ever going to be as popular as he thought it would be. Um, and that's just because it's not a main social media platform. It's not a Twitter, it's not a
Not.
Facebook.
It's not
It's
the
a
point of it.
it's a bootleg, basically.
Yeah.
And when you make something where it's only within one circle of a group of people, you're gonna get that one group of people, but that's the only type of people you're gonna attract, except for some trolls maybe. But like that's universal. But you're only gonna attract that one group, and so you're gonna lose money there, right? So Trump's at a loss with that. Who could ever predicted that, right? So, and that's what I have for now for there. I think you have something very interesting that you're gonna want to talk about. Um,
Yeah. So, in other news, like Chris kind of implied earlier, it was a big day yesterday. So part of that is there's two elections, one in Illinois, one in Wisconsin. Right now we're talking about the one in Illinois. It was a Chicago mayoral race. The winner, if you haven't heard, was progressive candidate Brandon Johnson.
let's
Relatively
go,
tight race.
Brandon.
Go Brandon, indeed.
What are names
Uh,
to have in politics nowadays? What
Paul
a shit.
Vallis was his opponent that he beat narrowly, about a point or two difference between them. But it's really impressive though, despite the actual race itself being close, because this dude Brandon went from 5% in like when he announced his bid to run, and he ended up winning. I mean, and the way that happened, I mean, he was a public school teacher. He has a background in unions, so he definitely like from jump was like kind of the progressive guy in the race. And then there was a lot of candidates in the initial round of voting for the race for mayor, partially because Lori Lightfoot, who was the previous mayor, or she's still the mayor technically, the incumbent, she was very very unpopular. A lot of people really had a lot of problems with her, from like her own aides working with her. Obviously, the conservative media is going to have like a field day. Even people like on the left had a lot of issues with how she managed the city. So she was the first incumbent in 40 years to lose her race in that town, in that city. So it came down to, so there's a runoff between Brandon and Paul, Johnson and Vallis, and it kind of was like it's kind of becoming a trend now. This isn't, obviously this is a general election, but the way they do their race is a bit unique, because basically most of the candidates in the race ran as Democrats, but it was a general election as opposed to, they do a primary usually. So, but nonetheless, I mean, they basically, was a progressive Democrat versus a like a centrist, like, you know. Honestly, Paul Vallis is even more conservative than most of like the centrist Democrats that are like, you see in like Congress and the Senate. And he was obviously backed by the police unions and stuff like that. More tough on crime messaging, whereas Johnson was definitely embracing more kind of like social work, community policing and stuff like that, as opposed to like, the police force as we know it. His approach was unique though when it comes to crime, because he kind of didn't fully embrace the defund the police motto. I think he made some comments being supportive of it in the past, and that was obviously used against him in the context of this kind of race, especially in a state like Chicago. But his messaging was very strong. Actually, Chris sent me a clip of his, not unknowingly, at one point in the past couple of weeks, where he talks about like how we need to kind of refocus crime and how we treat people who are likely to become criminals in those types of circumstances. So clearly the message resonated. I mean, he got a base to win, so that's very good. And I think it shows like a definitely a more progressive momentum coming in this country that you've kind of been seeing bubble up over the past 5 years or so.
I thought the clip of the guy was much younger. I thought it was somebody else, but I'm assuming it's the one with the bringing trade back into schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a clip. Yeah, so I mean that one made its rounds online. I think that's what made him really win the election right there. Something like that. Um,
I think I think the messaging, because it's undeniably like progressive, but it's also like it's populist in a way. It's like kind of like
oh,
appeals to people's
absolutely.
everyday needs. It's not just like saying like the same old like we need our police and this and that, but it's also not kind of going too far into embracing ACAB and talking about defund the police. Like, because I think the defund the police movement does have like I agree with it essentially, but you can't really say like because when you say defund the police, people will think either you want to like fire police officers or you want like the police officers are working to make less money. That's not really the point of the defund movement, at least to most rational people. It's more so about reallocating resources to other, and that's something he talked about a lot too, was reallocating to like mental health and stuff like that. Like things that would like not as like a fuck you to police, but more so as like a hey, like these are tools that we can also use to help fix these problems. And obviously there is a lot of resentment towards police, especially like on the left. And I think a lot of it's justified. But when it comes to like running a campaign to win an election, you kind of have to be realistic. Not only in terms of like, because there are like not only for the police officers themselves, but for people like and their perceptions of them. 'Cause I think people are a lot more receptive to some of these ideas than you would think if you just watched like the news. But it's just with social media and the media climate, it becomes very polarizing to talk about policing. But I think most, like we talk about with guns, like when me and Chris were talking about guns the other day, all these solutions are pretty common sense. It's just there's a lot of distractions and mischaracterizations that make people kind of get all crazy about them.
yeah. Definitely. The word defund the police, I feel like has been, in a sense, hijacked. But when you say defund the police, like when you say something like that, like of course you're gonna strike a chord, and rightfully so though, right? Because
Yeah,
that's what it
like obviously
says.
it's meant to be provocative, but
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
but at the same time, like there is a lens to which you can discuss that and have it make sense. But the problem is that that just can't exist, right? When you have like media cycles that will play that on loop and give people the wrong idea about what you mean by that,
It
or
is
maybe there are
now.
people who talk about the idea and kind of mean it in like a way that wouldn't work, essentially.
It is now used as a buzzword, right?
hmm
I mean, you
Like
look
when
at
I first started hearing it, I kind of took it as like a more moderate way to say ACAB. Which,
I
I mean, at this point, they're basically
guess,
equivalent. And if you don't know,
yeah.
ACAB stands for All Cops Are Bastards, which, not really going to win most campaigns in most parts of this country saying that. So, you know.
You know, Andrew, congratulations. You made every cop watching this feel like a piece of shit. No,
No, I
no.
mean,
Yeah,
I
I know
don't
you're just
agree with
explaining it. You're
that,
just
but
explaining it. No,
I'm
that's
saying, like, yeah, if you're a cop watching this, you're probably not going to vote for the guy saying that.
yeah, probably not. There's a good chance you don't.
Good chance. But most progressive candidates, when they talk about defunding, they're not saying they personally hate you. They're just saying, like, hey, like, we should do things in a more kind of like universal way when it comes to addressing like crimes, not just like stopping criminals in action, but also like, hey, why are people criminals? And it's like again to bring it back to the gun thing, like we don't just want to like we want like measures to prevent gun violence in terms of guns themselves, like regulating how many people get them and stuff like that. But we also want meaningful change, mental health. Just say it again. for like, hey, like, well, what causes people to do this stuff? Like, what are the circumstances? Like, obviously mental illness is the easy one. Poverty is another one, very common. Like, if people like, are people really gonna steal if they have what they need? Not as likely, I'd assume. So it's a lot that goes into it,
Oh
and
yeah.
I do, but and then on other issues, of course, like I mentioned before, he's a union leader, so on labor, he's definitely a lot better than I think Valis would have been. I'm hoping that he's gonna be a lot better than Lightfoot is on these issues.
The way it seems like it, I mean, it seems like anyone could be better than Lightfoot, really. Like, literally anyone.
Really, like, it's just so much like, yeah, like, and just as far as like just being like on a very base level, like she kind of failed as like a politician, right?
You know what's crazy about this whole thing?
What?
The fact that Lightfoot you said she got voted out,
Mm-hmm.
but yet in New York we had De Blasio. It's like no one
I
voted
don't
this
know,
man
man. Like the
out.
Bloods, like New
He
York,
was terrible, dude.
they
He
just don't
was
have good mayoral candidates.
garbage.
Like
We
honestly, like why? Because we
did.
obviously I'm from New York. He lives in New York still, and we
Yeah.
followed that mayoral race a couple years back, and like all the candidates were just terrible, honestly.
Well, look, in
Like me
2021,
and Chris talk about Yang a lot, but I was even watching Yang like run for mayor, and I was like, this is not the guy that ran for president.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't the guy that, but like I said, like we talked about, he had
And
Bloomberg people help.
I look at this, like I look at Brandon Johnson's platform, like damn, like I wish someone like this ran in New York and like kind of was strong and a good speaker and didn't have random stupid like controversies like the more left leaning candidates in the New York mayor race did. Like that was
Oh
just
man, dude.
embarrassing.
Oh
And
yeah,
then Adams
they were pretty
swept
bad.
that, and now New York's
Dude,
basically.
you gotta look. He played the better centrist role than Yang, and because there's a group of people, might be top secret, that Adams was able to attract that Yang couldn't.
Well, there's
Might
two
be
main
a
groups,
little
but
secret here. Ready? Black people. Couldn't get him. You know why? I'll give you. I hate it, man. I hate it. He could have ran a good campaign. Dave Chappelle was literally going to go on tour for this guy, and the Bloomberg manager turned around and said, "No, he's too controversial. But make sure you write your opinion on
It's
Twitter,
crazy
saying
too
you're for
because I was
Israel over Palestine, so then you can get the Jewish vote, because that's not controversial."
It's
No,
crazy too because like they said
so
that before
stupid.
Chappelle really got like really controversial with the
Yeah,
like the trans
exactly.
comments and stuff.
Before the trans stuff, he would have he had a good chance of winning, but he did
But
not
I think he needed some more
try to win
fundamental
that
stuff
vote.
than just an endorsement. But yeah,
No, of
like
course, but
we need
that would
like a
have
general
helped,
mindset change,
dude. If Dave Chappelle, if and Dave Chappelle speaks to a lot of people politically, okay, they laugh.
especially
You know,
back
we
then,
laugh,
right?
we watch comedy. Yeah, well, even now, he speaks to a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
He speaks to a lot of minorities. Okay, look what he calls white people who voted for Trump that live in Ohio. He calls them tiki torch whites. Like this man, okay, attracts a lot of minorities. And who could he have grabbed? Black people. It's that simple. But no, we can't do that because we have to appease only one group of people, and that's it. In the most diverse city in the United States, they grabbed one type of people, one type of group. It was white males. That's it. And some of them were Jewish, of course, because he said he was pro-Israel. But that's it, man. And it's like when you run an election, you have to try to get everybody. You have to try and obviously you need policy in order to back that up. But if you had Dave Chappelle there, there's a good chance that you're going to get that backing. So Yang failed, and it was really upsetting for both me and Andrew because we still want, like I said, we said numerous times, we want to see this guy succeed. Okay? We don't think this is the right path he's on right now, but hopefully he does succeed and, you know, helps the amount of people he wants to help. I don't know exactly what direction that is, but you know, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. But Lightfoot, I mean, she got voted out, and we have terrible candidates in New York. as you said. Besides Yang, I mean, look at Morales. Morales was the only person there, besides Adams and Yang, where I could say they looked professional. He came in dressed real nice, okay, spoke professionally, and sounded a little bit on the progressive side, which would help a lot of people who were left wing. And so I said, hey, maybe this Morales woman isn't that bad. Maybe she's pretty good. Then you see her history of her being a landlord, and people are like, we can't do this. No way. I forgot like all the accusations she had against her, but it was pretty bad. Okay, she had to drop out of that race. You know what I mean? Progressives weren't going for you, so it's like the other leftists. I did not look like a professional to me. Like everyone else there looks like a science project, but I guess that's just politics in general. They don't. I don't know, man. And the only person that looked good, like I said, was Morales, Yang, and Adams. And Adams was the one to take the cake because Yang fell off
Yeah, they all had
because
really questionable
yeah.
campaigns and records and everything.
Oh man, it was bad, dude. It was really something. So to see Chicago get a candidate that I don't live in Chicago, don't really know anything except for their flag and their pizza, and that's only because I typed it in on Google and it's on CM Punk's trunks when he wrestles, right? The flag. So I don't know what's good for Chicago, right? I don't really know what's good for New York. That's what I would say I know for. But hopefully Chicago enjoys being on the progressive side uh, because that's what they got, right?
Yeah.
What would you
It's
consider Lightfoot?
hmm?
What would you consider Lightfoot? Like leaning?
Like
Not to put you on the spot or anything, but like I don't know if you know too much of like what Lori Lightfoot
I'm
was
trying to
doing.
like think of like a good like a good direct comparison. I'd say kind of like honestly probably like De Blasio actually. That's a
Okay,
pretty adept one. Like
all right.
actually.
That's what I was looking for. I was thinking you're gonna say something like a De Blasio. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, De Blasio definitely had his troubles, and Adams I don't think is any better. Is he any worse? I don't know. But and yeah, and that's the Chicago mayor race. Um, and we also have Wisconsin, right?
Yep. That's
That
the
race.
so we get to that now. The the heck. Hold on, I gotta find it.
He's doing
Alright.
some research.
No, I wrote
Midway.
this stuff down.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but this was the for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Um, basically, like obviously they're state Supreme Courts, and they rule on stuff based because we have feudal system, and right now the Wisconsin Supreme Court is ruled. I think it's 4-3 conservative judges, and as a result, was despite being a state that votes 50-50, like they're like one of the swingiest swing states right now. They have a near supermajority in their legislative branch. They have a Democratic governor, but Republicans basically everywhere else. And some people credit that due to like things like gerrymandering and things of that nature. So like they draw the lines in ways that are more advantageous to Republicans, even though like really realistically like it should be more of a distribution among like Democrats and Republicans. So that made the race a pretty big deal. Combine that with the fact that Roe v. Wade, as we all know, was overturned last year, and Wisconsin has a law on the books since the 1800s that bans abortion. So they've had
Oh
this.
wow.
They've always had this law on the books basically since then. But because Roe v. Wade got voted on in the 70s, they obviously when they had like a a more liberal government, they never really thought to overturn it because they're like, hey, I mean, this is the law, so we don't really have to worry about it. But obviously that's not the case right now. The laws obviously was been reauthorized since Roe v. Wade, but because Wisconsin's a Democratic governor, the governor's basically been like doing whatever he can to make sure that that law isn't enforced. and that was an issue that could have potentially gone to the Supreme Court. So this race, for that reason, was very important. And then on top of that, being a swing state and being one of the main states that's a big deal in the presidential race, if you have one of the candidates say, "Hey, I don't think this election was fair. I think there's a lot of fraud. I think this needs to be investigated," and they have enough cases that go up to the courts. If you have a court that's more favorable towards you or more negative, then that can also impact that decision. So, for those reasons, this was one of the biggest state court races in the country's history. $45 million were spent on this race across both sides.
Wow.
And in the end, the Liberal candidate, Janet, hold on, I have like a thing on her name. I just had it up. It's a weird one. So
I'm looking at it right now. I'm not even gonna try it.
yeah, it's Janet Protasewicz. Protasewicz, yeah, that's the name.
You definitely said that wrong.
I looked up her own pronunciation because she has that on her site.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I don't know. I
That's
could have
good
said
to
it
know.
wrong.
Well,
But
I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe you said it right.
I probably did, but I don't know. I'm not gonna put too much faith in myself. But yeah, so for all those reasons I listed, this was a really important race. The Liberal candidate won, which for me, fantastic, because that means that Wisconsin will continue to be a state that most likely will be pro-choice. It will hopefully have their map redrawn so that Congress is less more. I guess it's more equitable to how the state actually votes because they are a swing state. They aren't a Republican state. And hopefully, if when Trump loses again, hopefully in 2024, he doesn't have any pretense to like do any weird fucky George Bush style election stealing. So that's a pretty good one. And I will say, I mentioned that
I saw that smile when you said hopefully and Trump doesn't. Look at that. Look at that smile on you.
I will say though, the Chicago race was
Devious.
very close, but this race was not. She won with a 10-point lead, which I think says because we talk a lot about how the Republicans are very how do we like not their ideas aren't very popular, which for a long time they've been able to kind of mask and kind of downplay in a lot of ways. But I think lately there's been a lot more swing in, hey, I mean, these guys are extreme, abortion's on the ballot, this and that. I think I saw somewhere a third of Janet's ads, I'm not gonna say her last name, of Janet's ads were about abortion. So obviously this is going to be an issue that the Democrats will milk, rightfully so.
Oh, absolutely. They're gonna milk that. They're gonna milk that cow.
But I mean, as they
Absolutely.
should, right? Because it's like, how do you overturn something that the overwhelming majority of the country support in some fashion?
I see. That's something to me where it's like you have states that already say no to abortion, right?
Yeah, and it's like,
Why even try this? And we have conversation upon conversation about this, and the conclusion to it is that you don't gain anyone. I don't know anyone that has been gained from this, as a vote, as a person, as anything. Like you could be pro life, right?
well, I mean, at the same time, you have to remember too that these guys like. It's ideological to them. It's not just a matter of winning an election. Like they want this to happen legitimately.
Of course, but they also have to think realistically. It's not going to help their
Well, they also just
case.
have to think that they're wrong. It's the better one.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, well,
like
that's
completely banning abortion is nonsense, and if you think that's the case, I think that you just need to live a little more because there's a lot of instances where abortion makes sense.
look. I've been to the rally. I've been there. I've talked to these people, and they are really nice guys.
I'm
Really
sure they're
nice
nice
people.
personally, but they're
But and I do hear them out, and like if you see any of my interviews, I try to be as straightforward as possible, and I try not to um I don't want to poke anybody. I just kind of want to get an understanding of where people come from, and from there I got an understanding where they come from, right? And they would tell me stories, sad stories that turn into happy stories, and and I'm really happy that those stories do exist, right? But I still, like I said, personally, I cannot come into an agreement with them. You know, they want to feel the way they do. They have every right to never even think about getting an abortion, right?
That's why it's called pro-choice.
You know, I mean, the whole murder thing. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and I think you have to look at it by the situation. You know, the mother's gonna pass, or you know, there's a lot of instances where you can look at this and be like, all right, well, these are some key stuff: rape, incest, whatever. I mean, you look at Texas and they're like, well, fuck you. Should have never let it happen. Should have
I
never
think
wore that dress. You know what I mean?
I
And it's
think that
fucked up, but
the
this
facts of
is the
like,
law.
yeah,
You know?
I think two facts. One, like you said, like there's gonna be pretense where an abortion you kind of have to do it, right?
Hmm.
Or either you have to because she'll die, or because like I mean, there's just no conceivable way they could have not had sex. Because I think at the core of it, there is like an idea of, oh, well, women shouldn't be sleeping around kind of thing, or they should be more careful.
Well, look, I
But
mean,
that's at the core of it for like. But regardless,
yeah,
like those are the two like. But like so rape and life of the mother are like the two main like okay, like no matter what. So that is one reason why there should be some form of abortion. And when you combine that with the fact that if abortion was truly like, let's say a national ban happens, that's what these people want. Let's say it happens. In a situation where there's a national abortion ban, people with money are going to have abortions at the same rate that they always have.
that's always is gonna happen.
You're just creating more impoverished children. You're not really addressing like you're not doing what you think you're doing. So it's like so you're basically just making more people criminals or making more people like born into poverty. That's kind of the results if you did a national abortion ban.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I talked to them, and a lot of these people that were saying was yeah, we're trying to get it banned in all 50 states.
Hmm.
Um, so, and I would ask them, I say, well, do you think there's any case where there should be an abortion, right? A lot of them said no. I think everyone said no. I don't have the video up. It still has to be edited. I can't believe it's still got to be edited. But it's been some time. It's been since January. But definitely when it's up, you could see it. And I mean, people just really care about this issue like a lot. But I, as we know, me and Andrea just stated it. More people care about pro-choice being an option rather than pro-life, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
The overwhelming majority of just people in this country want some form of abortion.
and that
Be it
is an
allowed.
example
It's
of
fact.
good advertising. This person turned around that's running, said, okay, we're going to attack this. You look at those ads, okay? You look at that ad. And I haven't seen the ad, but I know what it's about. That comparatively to any ad you saw on the Republican midterms, and you look at that like, wow, what a difference. So, I mean, and it's not about what you're for. I'm just talking about the content of what you have in it. Okay, if it
Yeah.
looks like
Well,
a if it
they
looks like
say
an
ads are the
SNL
most
parody
effective.
skit, then maybe you shouldn't use that as your campaign ad. You know, or if it looks like it's formal, it looks like it's intelligent, it looks like you're gonna be educated on it, then maybe that's a good way to sell whatever you're trying to sell.
They say that
So
ads that kind of go after are more successful, but it has to be like in a, you know, like you said, like
it,
a measured kind of like
yeah.
logical like
Oh, of
way.
course. It can't, like I said, it can't be an SNL parody skit. It can't look like that because if it does, it's funny to us, right? And we may joke around about it, but as we've seen, it doesn't get you elected, you know? So unfortunately, you can't go down that route. And maybe you could, and maybe these other people are just terrible candidates. I mean, that's another thing, right? So, but I guess we'll see going forward if anyone decides to do that again.
Yeah, I think that's all in this.
That will conclude Wisconsin, and now we go into our last topic, um,
All the good news
which,
today, but this is
oh yeah.
pretty shitty.
So, well, good news depending if you're on the left, right? If you're on the left, is good news. Uh, if
Is
you're on
it?
the right, you're not having a good time
Oh, you
today.
mean these? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, what else?
I thought you were
I
talking
see.
about the
You
Florida
were
thing. I was like,
smiling throughout this whole time. You love all this. So, I mean,
yeah, these
I
are good.
assume most of our base that watches this is like either in the middle or I mean they lean left. But I'm saying for people who go back and watch this and they're on the right, they're gonna be like, "What the hell is wrong with these guys?" Right? Well, they're gonna attack you. Okay. Some will
I
attack
mean,
me.
you're.
Depends. I'm issue by issue guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I describe myself for now. For now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Right to read.
the Florida EPA survey that they put out counted that there's some of 9.2 million lead pipes carry water into homes across the U.S. Now, this is a big problem. Okay, the survey was released on Tuesday. It was the first time they asked about these lead pipes. Over 1 million of these pipes are underground. A lot of states that have, or a lot of these pipes are in states like Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Illinois has over 1 million pipes with lead pipes. Okay, so it goes from Illinois, then it's Ohio number two, then number three is Pennsylvania, Texas, and then it's New York. Okay, and well, you say, well, what's the problem here? Okay, just the EPA being the EPA. Well, if you know what lead is, okay, then you could probably skip this whole part. But let me tell you what lead does to you if you don't know, okay? For the adults, okay, it causes brain damage, it causes kidney damage, and it can interfere with the production of red blood cells that carry oxygen to all parts of your body. So, if you're an adult and you come into contact with some kind of lead or you're drinking lead water, that could happen to you. Okay, and it's really harmful to pregnant women, of course, and it's really bad for any children who were to drink that. Okay, for children, this is exactly what it would cause for you. Okay, behavior and learning problems, lower IQ and hyperactivity, slower growth, hearing problems. All these things are absolute problems that have to be solved. Okay, and I think this is one of those issues where it doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left. This is definitely a problem that we should not be facing. I mean, we face a lot of problems when it comes to like just food in general and what we consume. Now having lead pipes in the mix does not flow well. And people wonder why people are dying off so quick. There's a lot of things, all right, but this doesn't help the case. A lot of people get serious damage to their bodies because of this, all right? The Biden's administration signed a law into place to remove all the country's lead water pipes. The $15 billion from the infrastructure law for lead pipes will help a lot, but it's not going to do. It's not going to work too many wonders. Okay, it's not going to fix all the problems, right? And if you look back, look at what happened in Flint, Michigan, their water crisis, right? So obviously, big issue. Something that is going to go under the radar. Why? Well,
It doesn't
you
generate
watch
the
the
headlines,
beginning of
but
our show. Yeah, you watch the beginning of our show. You know
Don't
the
know
Trump
why.
indictment is everywhere. It's number one on Twitter, number one on any type of news source that you get. All right, and there's definitely a lot of things that we don't cover on this show. We just cover 4 or 5 topics. If we're lucky, 6. Okay, we can't cover everything within the span of an hour, a little over an hour. Okay, but these news sites, all you're gonna see is Trump indictments. So I mean, again, we could bring it back to this is a DeSantis issue because it's in Florida. Okay, and you could talk about how this could be involved in the 24 election if he runs.
I don't think that's gonna be an issue.
But hey,
Maybe it might be like a pot shot, but it's not.
maybe it might be one of those. I feel like a lot of liberals are gonna go after him about COVID. Like you opened this and you did that. It's gonna be a lot of that. Unless there's something else that they come out with, or I guess they could do the NRA thing that you just mentioned, right? When he's signed behind closed doors, only having his circle there, only people from the NRA and stuff like that. I mean, they could go after him for that, absolutely. But yeah, so look, we'll see what happens. but definitely it's an issue that needs to be
It's just an
fixed.
issue that needs to be fixed regardless of
Oh,
politics.
absolutely.
And
And it
it's
does
really
matter.
unfortunate
Hmm.
that a lot of safety issues like this are becoming partisan. Like you saw what happened with the gas stove thing. Like there was a study that came out like, hey, gas stoves aren't really the best. Maybe we should look into having electric stoves, and it became like this. Oh, you're not gonna take away my gas stove type of like. That makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like lead paint. We don't paint with lead anymore because for like the same kind of health reasons that you're letting out with the pipes. But a lot of this stuff is becoming like partisan now, which is really weird. And that's something I was kind of worried about with COVID, like when that became like kind of a partisan thing, and it's just kind of the trend's just kind of continuing. I feel like.
Well, yeah, that's gonna happen. I mean, hey, look, the most bipartisan thing that happened was TikTok. They brought everyone together, everyone rejoicing,
Yeah,
holding
for like a
hands.
week.
Yeah, until the Restrict Act came out, then everyone's like, screw this. That's it.
Yeah.
Goodbye, TikTok. You can stay. Don't worry about it. You know. So, but yeah, uh, crazy world we live in. Um, no one's gonna come in and take your gas stoves. I don't think.
No.
I don't think that's gonna happen. It's kind of like saying
If
they're gonna
they do,
come
it's for your
in.
own good.
If they come in and do anything, or should not, I guess they'll take the cars and give you an electric car for free.
Yeah, why not?
But they're not gonna do any of that stuff. It's not realistic. That's
No,
why
it's
I when I
not.
see something like this and I see it appears on the news, for me personally, I look at that. I'm like, maybe I don't get an electric stove, but hey, thanks for the tip, I guess. Thanks for the and when it becomes normalized in the 2070s, where most people have an electric stove, because that's what's gonna happen. It's not gonna happen right away, like all things, right? Electric cars have been a big talk for years. They're still not normalized. They're getting a little bit more popular with Tesla, and a lot of these other car makers start making more electric cars. But again, um, a lot of these things don't happen that fast. So, but we do hope that this issue with the lead pipes gets fixed immediately. Like, absolutely. Like, immediately. Has to. So, that's what I have there. Is there anything you'd like to add before we
I think
close
you
out?
said enough on that. Yeah,
All right. So, thank you for joining us uh, this Wednesday. And we'll see you on Friday.
absolutely.
Hope to see you on Friday. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you then. Peace out.